Hello, and welcome to the Alchemist Inkwell.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people.
I'm Emily.
And I'm KristaLyn, and today I'm very, very stoked because we get to introduce you to one of the coolest people that I know, and I'm really excited to be able to share with everybody. We are bringing in translator and so many more things. Also, you own a publishing house. Everybody please welcome Andrea. Hi, Andrea.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Andrea, I know that anybody who knows me knows I'm obsessed with the translations of a lot of ancient texts. And you have experience in translation, and your story coming into that is fantastic as well. But are you the owner of Moira Press?
Yes, Moira Press is a publishing company, but nowadays it's more of a production studio because we do a lot of producing of young astrologers and musicians and stuff. But yeah, it started as a publishing company. We published a lot of ancient Greek into English translations. One of the books we're most well known for is this book, Astrological Remediation, a guide for the modern practitioner. This is not a translation. This is a textbook that was kind of a response to having read a lot of the translations.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of the publishing company came out of just self-publishing, but we don't really publish other people's books, but we do kind of work to take care of our babies, the ones that we have published. So.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Relatable.
We have been in the trenches of publishing. We understand so much.
Yeah.
What have you published?
Krista has that whole kind.
This whole shelf is me.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but recently got representation for her latest book. So she actually is an agent now and is going the traditional route.
I'm currently out on submission.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I know.
what's your book about? I mean, I have to...
No, it's great.
No, yeah. So, my book is the story. It's actually technically a historical fantasy because I cannot claim the things I've channeled in are like 100% fact. However, it is the story of a woman named Locusta. She was a poisoner who lived in ancient Rome. She's the reason that everyone makes jokes about like poison mushrooms killing emperors because she did that. So she actually offed multiple emperors. She did exist, but of course we get like 5 lines about her in Suetonius and 5 lines in Tacitus, and like that's all we get because she was a woman. Shock. But I first became aware of her and was like, well, she needs a story, and so that is what I've written.
Yeah, brains. Yeah. Another book that go ahead. I was going to say another book that I know you have translated because you recently were a guest on the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom's book club was Ensoulment, which is by Porphyry of Tyr, and you translated this.
Yes, yeah. That one took 7 years. That was a beast. That's probably my favorite book I've ever read in my life.
Yeah.
Definitely about how the soul gets in the body. Bigness.
Could you tell us more about that? That is fascinating.
Sure. Also, so the way I got that book was I was translating the Vedic Valens anthology, which a lot of people know is a big anthology written by an ancient astrologer named Vedic Valens. The way that Ensoulment came around is I had translated a book called The Introduction to the Tetrabiblos by Porphyry of Tyr, and there was a religious scholar, his name was Roger Pierce, and he was putting a call out to have someone translate the introduction to the Tetrabiblos, and someone said, well, this woman's already done it, her name's Andrea Gehrz. And so I found this and I went to Roger Pierce and I said, hi, this is Andrea Gehrz. I just was wondering if there's anything else you guys need translated since you're religious scholars. And in my inbox came a zip file of this book Ensoulment that had never been translated into English on how the soul gets in the body. And I was like, okay, I'll put this in my queue. And so, and it had been written by the same guy who wrote the introduction to the Tetrabiblos that I had already translated. So here's the introduction to the Tetrabiblos, which is more of it's the same size as Ensoulment. So Porphyry liked to write these essays of these sizes, but this introduction to the Tetrabiblos is very technical, and it's got all these like sections like on joining in juxtaposition or whatever. It's all these technical astrology terms. But then Ensoulment is just this long essay on how the soul gets in the body. So such a different work by Porphyry of Tyr, but he was a Neoplatonic philosopher, so he was actually studying Platonism, and astrology comes down through the Platonic side. And so he wrote on everything from like vegetarianism to everything. So, but as you'll see in Ensoulment, he says at the beginning, he's writing to this guy named Geron, and he's like, Geron, many people have been confounded by this topic, including the doctors, and like, so he's not necessarily saying this is how the soul gets in the body. He's saying this is a very interesting topic, and can we muse about this topic on all these different ways? So the whole essay is like asking questions like, does a soul need to be led to its body, or does it inhabit the body naturally? Or what do we do with a baby that seems to be ensouled but it's not doing anything? And like, so it's this big long essay, and it's really fascinating.
That is so cool. I love that. I love a good, well, like, I think ancient musing is so beautiful in so many ways because magic existed in such a different way at that time in general, and the way that it interacted with the world was so different too. So reading it now in this perspective, when things are just kind of ramping back up into living in a more spiritually integrated fashion versus back then when it was very spiritually integrated and things were very naturally coming, like the difference between the two is always so fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and it really comes down to this thing called teleology, which KristaLyn had mentioned earlier, not on camera, but I was queried by the Mountain Astrologer to write an article on what I learned from translating all these ancient Greek books, and I think they were looking for techniques and all this stuff, but I racked my brain and I was like, I learned teleology, which is the study of things becoming themselves, and all this astrology, like in Soulmate, they compare people to plants the whole time, and this is all ancient development theory of like, if a plant is growing and it starts falling over, what do we do? That's the same as if a human's growing and they start struggling, what do we do? And that's where astrological remediation comes in. So I think really what was profound, Emily, at that time is that everyone knew teleology, which was this spiritual development theory. And in fact, in the Bible, Jesus says, I have completed my telos and now I can die. He said, Demetra George quotes him as the last sentence in the Bible. He says that, I'm sorry, that's the last sentence in her book, but she quotes Jesus from the Bible. But the point is that even the Bible knows what a telos is, that we're all developing into our own thing, and we each have a life purpose. And then, when Jesus completed that, he could then die. So you're right that teleology was woven into the fabric of everything ancient, whereas we are literally missing teleology from the modern framework. And so that's why astrology seems woo-woo or ungrounded, is because it's not, teleology is missing.
Yeah. And now we can all see why this is the perfect trio to be on a podcast together right now. Yes.
Absolutely. Tell us more, I guess, on, speaking of teleology, on that sort of space. You mentioned it comes from these books, but what are some more of the core principles of that if people wanted to kind of incorporate more of that thought process into their life?
Absolutely. Well, so a telos is a thing that's the root word of teleology, right? Teleology would be the study of telos. And a telos is anything that has manifested into itself. So we would say the Emily Dexter telos channels ancient spirits, and it is now writing a book, and they look a lot into the fruits of the vine, so we would say like a plant kind of grows, and then in middle age, around where you are, Emily, the fruits of the vine start coming out, and right, it's like, here's one of your fruits is this book that you're writing. And so it's like this idea that each of us has a life purpose. In teleology, they look at something called final cause, which is, what is this thing growing for? What does this thing exist for? So if we took like this object, right? And we were like, what is the telos of this object? And you're like, well, what's it for? What's like, well, it's for clipping nails, right? But then it's like, can we do something else with it? Yeah, I can clip my bead string, which is what I use it for. Can I put a watermelon on it? Well, probably not, because the watermelon would roll off. But the point of this is, we each have a life purpose according to teleology, which we're made for. But we can be used for other things. So like, we can say, Emily can write, so let's have her write our science essay. We could do that with you. But that's not really your telos, right? That's not what you're here for.
I was going to say, like, please don't. Oh, gods.
No, thank you.
Well, we can have you make a podcast or, whatever. But I will say, just in a long-winded answer here, is that this, the Tetrabiblos, which I don't know if I have a copy of that over here, but, which this is the intro to the Tetrabiblos, but the Tetrabiblos was called Apotelosmatica, which is, okay, mathematics is like all things connected to an issue. Like mathematics would be all things connected to maths. Telosmatics is all things connected to telos. So, and then that prefix is full on. So astrology was actually all things connected to a telos being expressed to its nth degree, which we could look at as like mega manifestation theory, or why do we look at a chart? Is to say, what is your purpose and how can we help you manifest that, to the nth degree.
Well, and for this, correct me if I'm wrong, you were kind of in the realm of Project Hindsight, which is the project that was doing a lot of the translations for ancient Greek texts, etc., in the 90s, that really brought Hellenistic astrology back into our awareness. And you kind of just decided during a really interesting transit of yours to learn ancient Greek so you could do some of the translations too.
Like, how political do you guys want me to be?
Go for it.
You can do whatever. It's all good.
Okay, well, So it's interesting because there's a whole subset of Hellenistic astrology, which we know there's the astrology podcast, and blessed be to the astrology podcast. Thank you for your good work. But what happened was at Project Hindsight, I was there. I had gotten sent by an anonymous benefactor to this Project Hindsight. Like, I still don't know who funded my trip. I don't know. I was sent there, and I heard Robert Schmidt, who had translated a lot of these Vedic Valence books, struggling. He was struggling with how to figure out certain translation questions and struggling. And so I did this kind of annoying Pisces Moon Square Neptune thing, which is to stop listening to Robert Schmidt and start making a movie of him. So this was when I'm a producer too, and so in my young age, I was like had this like external hard drive and this camera, and I was just like started filming him, and I was like, this is crazy. I'm just gonna film these people and then go learn Greek on my own, because I was like, he's struggling with. I'd been a sign language interpreter at that time for about 10 years, and it's like I wouldn't struggle with the same translation problems. I mean, I'm trained to translate, right? Mm-hmm. So I went off to Portland State University and learned Greek and Latin on my own, and kind of rogue scholared it and just started the translations on my own. And so in some ways I'm not part of the Hellenistic astrology community, because I it's not like I refused to work with them, but they were impeding my process they kept wanting to teach me how to translate when I was like, you guys are not an expert in translation. I'm working with all the sign language interpreters they're autistically kind of historians, and I'm autistically a mathematician going into every sentence being like, what does this say here? Mm-hmm. And so it took me 15 years. I was called crazy by many people. And and then I finally finished the translations. So am I a Hellenistic astrologer? I'm saying not really, because for me this was a lit review, which is when you go back in time to see what's been done in your field. Mm-hmm. And then you move forward. And that's more of me. It's like I move forward into astrological remediation. I'm like, well, if everything's fated, then we better have remedies. Like, yeah. So I didn't stay in Hellenism. I moved forward from it, and so that's why I'm not necessarily part of that crew.
Yeah.
I love that, though. I mean, that's, I think, how evolution happens, right? Like, I'm glad you moved forward from it. And with that, could you describe a little bit more about what astrological remediation is? Because I am not an astrologer. I'm in no part of the astrological community. So if we could have a little bit of context there, I think a lot of our listeners would find a lot of value in that.
Okay, nice. I do want to mention something about like my translation. I'm also like of the more counterculture crusty punk vibe. Like, I'm a DIY crusty punk, like doing stuff with Sharpie and paper. I've been queer, like I'm just like Valence. Like I just want to say that I'm also like representing that kind of counterculture translation of just like roguing it out DIY. Okay, sorry.
No, I'm glad that you threw that in, because I think that the like counterculture punk queer translation's almost the more authentic expression of all of it anyway. And so
especially when you look at Valence.
Oh yeah, he was suffering.
But I think that in and of itself is a very important note, and I'm glad you did it that way and also threw that in there.
Well, I was going to say the same thing. I love that you saw the way things were being done and what was getting the attention and the focus and whatever, and you were like, I still think I can do it better. I'm going my own way, which is just honestly the best way to do things. Talk about teleology, right? Like you're following not the zeitgeist, not the media or the marketing or the whatever, the spotlight. You're following where you know is right. And I think that's really fun.
Yeah, like, are you guys familiar with Riot Girl culture?
Riot Girl? Yeah.
Vaguely? Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, it makes me think of the band Bikini Kill when, like, Kathleen Hanna, where, like, all these guys were moshing and they were kind of, like, messing with girls in the mosh pit, and the girls were getting hurt and stuff like that. And Kathleen Hanna would stand up and she'd be like, girls to the front, like, get back! And, like, Riot Girls are riotous activists, females. I have a Mars Square Sun, so Emily, that's a really brutal, masculine aspect in my chart. Like, I am a dude at the 28th degree. But it's like, I was a total riot girl about it. I was just like, oh, no, you're not. No, you don't. And so I think part of the reason I'm still in trouble is because I did it riot girl style, and I wasn't like asking Chris Brennan, like, what do you think of my translation? I was like, no, you don't know. You don't read Greek. Like, but see, that's why I'm like still in trouble. But I'm fine being in trouble. I mean, that's what riot girls do. I mean,
it's good trouble.
So, I love that as an affirmation. I'm fine being in trouble. That's so good.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, but I would always come together on a panel with those guys and totally talk about translations. Like, it's kind of like in WWF wrestling, the guys wrestle, but then they like shake hands, and then it's like You're Hulk Hogan, Chris, and I'm Macho Man Randy Savage. Some people call me Andy Savage, and we can get in the ring and shake hands. Like I'm not gonna not cooperate with a good discussion. Okay.
Yeah, fantastic.
Remediation is the art of healing anything in a chart that is problematic. So it could be anything from psychic struggles, like when you start being a trance medium, which it sounds like you are, Emily. It's like, then if you what's real and what's not. Maybe you're struggling with Neptune issues, and so might deal with psychicism. Some people have violent charts. Some people have charts that won't talk. Some people have a Mercury Saturn and they have their throat chakras kind of closed. So we deal with everything from self-esteem issues to emotional problems, like anything you could find that's problematic in a chart. Remediation will help with those things. I don't know how long-winded you guys want me to be, but you can use crystals, everything from crystals, but a lot of what we do is write context. So we would put a trance medium chart in a context where they're looking for a trance medium. We would take them out of like the realism math class and be like, no, we're going to put you in the psychic temple. So we do a lot of moving people around to write contexts, and it's kind of like celebrating a telos, like what is a person here for and how can we help them through any difficulties in that.
It's like accommodation for your telos.
Yeah, that's one of my main, I guess I'll call it an issue. I would just say sticking point, I think, with astrology in general is so many people treat it as like a sentencing or like a prescription of like, this is how it's going to be for you. Deal with it. I have the same issue with like human design. Obviously astrology is not human design. I'm not saying that it is, but I'm just saying like there's a lot of times people will misinterpret it as like, well, my astrology says this, so I can't do that thing. And it's like, well, but you can do that still, or you can navigate this way, or you can accommodate that. So having multiple techniques, and please be as long-winded as you want about the remediation techniques, because I think that's fascinating. Yeah. That is so cool. That is such a open door from that I think a lot of people think is so closed, either for their own excuse and like limiting beliefs or because they're afraid. But
yeah, well, and I like your approach to it too, is like, how can we put you in an environment that actually celebrates who you are, rather than making you struggle against an environment that isn't for you. So many times in the astrological community, you hear about remediation as like rituals or talismans or whatever, and it's like you put this thing in your pocket and you should be good to go. But one thing that I'm learning about magic the more I study it is you have to actually do in accordance with the magic. So if you put a crystal in your pocket, it's motivating you to be in the right place at the right time, or to be surrounded by the people who also kind of share that vibe. But that's such a practical and applicable way to approach remediation, and it's honestly the easiest and smartest way I've heard it described.
Well, and part of it's cyclical remedy. The word remediation, that ending suggests an ongoing process of remedy. It's like we don't remedy things once. I think people think you get a crystal, you put it in your pocket, and then it's done. Well, we know that the senses detect change. So once the crystal's in our pocket for a while, we don't even notice the crystal. And what we often do is apply crystals per the transit. Like, so you'll have we isolate the planet that needs remedy. So let's say we say it's a violent offender and we're trying to keep him out of jail for domestic violence. Well, we'll find out which planet. We're like, what's this Mars, Moon, Pluto, and Scorpio? That conjunction is the violent aspect of personality. Okay, and then we start watching it cyclically. We put that 10-handed clock on there, and then we say, oh, here comes a transit to it. We're genetically predisposed towards violence here. The chart is genetic. It's Genesis, right? So it's as prescriptive. Emily is saying you're genetically predisposed towards this violence, like, and in that way it is fated, right? But we always want to take this free will approach of like, well, what can we do with this? So we have to cyclically remedy it and say, we might put stones in your pocket as the transits are coming up to that, then we take them out of the pocket and then we put them back in. But really, yeah, I mean, it's like that serenity prayer thing of like, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, that I have this genetic predisposition, and then the courage to change the things I can. What can I do with this? And then the wisdom. So I think we're always looking at what are the fates and what are the free wills here.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I love, I mean, everything is a fractal of everything else. So I'm like, of course it's in a cycle, and you have to do it cyclically and make the change happen. And that's just part of our nature. It's part of nature's nature. I mean, I think that's amazing. Would you be open to sharing some stories of how that has worked for people, or like remediations that you maybe discovered over time and how those kind of played out so that people can have like a more conceptual understanding?
Sure, absolutely. I'll do, since you're a psychic, I will do a psychic example. So we had, and this example is in the book, so I know I can publicly share it. So we had a person person, she had a Mercury square Neptune, which KristaLyn probably understands what that is. So Mercury is like your mental framework, and then Neptune is like your visioning. It's like a lot of times it's like it rings the pineal gland. So like she would cyclically go into states because it's a square. So the planets would hit it like 4 times a cycle, and she would go into these states where she could see spirits, and she didn't know what was real and what was not. So we, first of all, we acknowledge that she has a psychic chart, which acknowledgement and acceptance is a huge remedy, like in and of itself. Like, okay, girl, you're psychic. Okay, one of the reasons psychics can't be tested in a lab, I believe, is because the psychicism comes out cyclically and on certain transits. So do we have control of our psychicism? As a psychic, I can say not total. I kind of can control it because I know what transits it comes through. But it's like it's not just like do this like it's not replicatable in some ways as people think it is. So anyway, she would cyclically get these psychic moments, right? So what we did with her was use a lot of art to draw down her visions, what she was psychically seeing. Instead of saying, well, let's prove this against reality, we would say, we're not trying to prove your psychicism, we're just trying to draw down your visions to give you a release from this, being stuck in this vision realm. So we had her do like collage. She did all these collages on transits to her Neptune, and that really soothed her because she no longer was testing her visions against reality, but was just showing what she was visioning. Yeah. Let's see. Well, the the metal dudes. Okay, the riot girls and the metal dudes hang out. Okay, so we had a situation in the metal community in Portland where there was a domestic violence, and we said, what are we going to do about this politically? Because the female in this case posted online that the male had kind of assaulted, like her hand got hurt, and it's like the question was it on purpose and all this kind of stuff. But she posted it online, so he was like basically lambasted, like the whole crowd was mad at him, so he was like kind of in danger there. So we did a political campaign to say, can we explode in a good way? Can we combat domestic violence? Because these couples love each other, but they have cyclical violence in the chart, right? So why do they stay together? Well, the other parts of their chart love each other, and people cycle through violence, and we know the cycle of violence. I promise I won't do it again, and then it comes back cyclically, and most people are surprised. Like the astrologers are like, were you surprised by this cyclical thing we can see? I mean, I don't know. People like get with the program, but the point is we worked with it where can we explode in a good way. And so we actually did a campaign where I had my Mars opposing this metal producer's Mars, and he and I did all this fighting on Mars transits, but then we exploded into music. And so we've done a lot of like activism around trying to remedy violence issues is a big one. People always want me to be concerned with Mercury in retrograde, and I'm like, I'm so absorbed with passionate Mars syndrome, which we would call PMS. Like, violence is probably my biggest thing I fight.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It sounds very much like a channeled solution in a lot of ways based off of a chart problem, which is a really lovely marrying of like your own intuitive senses plus the chart and plus everything kind of combining, plus the person you're working with, like in their natural personness, and being able to kind of bring all those things together.
KristaLyn, do you use remedies?
I use coaching skills, which ends up being pretty similar. When someone comes to me and they've got something in their chart that typically another astrologer has told them limits them in some way or defines them irrevocably, we will try to identify which planet is most responsible. Typically we'll see if it's, if something has triggered it off in a transit recently or in their timing techniques. I do work a lot with traditional techniques, Hellenistic through medieval and Persian. And then we'll just talk about like, what can we do to do this in our favor more next time? Or how can we kind of actualize this in different ways? Mental health is a huge thing for what Em and I both do together. And so when we put that forward and we, lead with that as much as possible and lean into it, coming up with strategies is one of my favorite things to do in client work. Yeah.
So do you typically work with clients then like one-on-one with that, or is it mostly in the book capacity and you give people the book to figure that out themselves, or how do you work with people?
So I definitely take cases. A lot of what I work with is astrologers who are kind of locked into the fatedness of their chart. It actually traumatizes people to learn you're genetically predisposed to all these things, and now what do you do? I mean, so a lot of what I do is work with advanced astrologers actually to work out remedies, or and it is a cyclical process, like kind of like what KristaLyn was saying, of like identifying what works on certain aspects of the chart. We start with like kind of fading it out and like just watching things roll around. And then it's like we start making lists of like, this felt good on there. It's like my Mars gets really pent up, but it likes to crochet or like, kind of thing. And so then we end up with lists and then we start curating the experience. And like, so it's kind of a process. But I do work with a group every Tuesday where we read this book, Astrological Remediation. And that's a forum. It goes from 5:30 to 6:30 Pacific time. Anyone's welcome to join us. And that's a lot of advanced astrologers. And we have diehards who've been attending for 4 straight years. Some people pop in and out. But that's a lot of the really good work we do is to really teach practitioners. Because remediation is not the kind of thing you pick up and you learn in 1 hour. It's like years of study because it's case by case, right? Like each case is different.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emily, do you know in your chart what makes you psychic?
A lot of it. Krista, what in my chart makes me psychic?
Let me bring up your
Krista
chart.
has all of my chart and everything.
Em gets the added bonus of me being the co-host and personal astrologer.
Yeah. I don't have to be an astrologer because I have a Krista who's infinitely better at my astrology than I will ever be. So I just have this cool
Super
perk of
excited
being
to
like,
geek out about it.
Krista, hail.
So in M's chart, let's see, I want to bring out, I have to get to the outer planets. I did AstroSeek and it went traditional and they don't show the outer planets on that initial chart.
Emily, can I ask you, have you ever had struggles around being psychic?
So I've been psychic for my entire life very actively. Some of my earliest memories are psychic memory stuff. I did not realize when I was a little kid that other people didn't do what I did. People would be like, my imaginary friend's a unicorn. I'm like, mine's this old man by the water tower who yells at me. Yours is nice. Like, this is wild. And I did, when I realized, when I was like 7, 8, something like that, I realized other people weren't doing what I was doing. I tried to suppress it. Didn't work. It just made me afraid of it for a while. Wasn't suppressed, just was scared of it. So that kind of progressed through my adolescence. I definitely dabbled in it still and like played with it and did readings and stuff for people in high school. And then at the end of high school, I ended up getting into a really abusive relationship because when you try to suppress your intuition, you also suppress all forms of your intuition, and that doesn't go really great. And then after leaving that, I was finally in a space where I'm like, I'm going to explore this to the fullest of its ability. And that was when I was about 20 years old and have pretty much had no issues with it since, just continued expansion. So very comfortable with the psychicness. Other areas have got all sorts of messiness, but the psychicness is solid.
Well, and that could be, so we have Mercury is in a 10-degree applying opposition with Neptune.
Oh, okay.
From Cancer. And also Jupiter is in the 12th house in Virgo and is the benefic sect, if that relates. But Emily and I share the trait of having a moon conjunct Pluto. Mine's in the ascendant and hers is in the second, and they are in Scorpio.
Oh my goodness. Oh, those are very psychic. I mean, the Mercury Neptune #1, like that case I brought up of the psychic, Mercury Neptune. And then, yeah, the Pluto moon in Scorpio would be just like the depth of
mediumship for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Scorpio has its own set of remedies. Scorpio is such a brutal sign to. It gets obsessed and fixated on things. It's just Scorpio has a whole subset.
I've never seen that happen ever.
I'm a Scorpio as well. It doesn't come with my black background.
Your black lipstick.
Love
It's a
it.
whole vibe, though. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, like I get so obsessed with things that like I have to do something I call like multi-chording, where I have to put psychic chords out to hundreds of things so I don't get too obsessed with one.
That is a
Honestly?
good remediation, though. That's a great
Wow.
idea.
Yeah.
I don't tend to get super obsessed with one thing. I have like 5 or 6, and I usually am obsessed with the same time. But my only Scorpio placement is my moon. But Krista,
I have fixation situations. 100%.
What do you?
Everything. So I'm a Taurus sun and a Scorpio moon. And so that opposition, my whole chart pretty much talks to itself all over the place, which is fun. But I am quite autistic. And so I will get really into a routine that I adore. And then deviating from it becomes very difficult. But I like your idea of like putting out that. I think that's what I did when I went through a really hard time in January. I just started all the hobbies. So I could be very varied. Like I picked up piano and crochet, and I can solve a Rubik's Cube now, and just all those things.
Wow.
And it really helped me get more into being flexible and adaptable.
So one of my problems with being a Scorpio, because it is fixed, like you're saying, like plan
yeah.
changes kill me. Like, so it's
They're
like
the worst.
whenever I have I have a thing. I'll build up all these pictures around the plan, and I fix on it, and then if it changes, I have to like. Oh, it's painful. I can't even.
It's a physical effort at that point. Yeah. Yeah. Like my routine's changing tomorrow. I am doing it to myself, but I keep like I can taste what I was supposed to be eating tomorrow that I'm not eating, and I'm just like, oh, that's not going to happen. And so it's a thing.
I'm
Yeah, a
over
lot
here
of
bopping around Gemini style.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. Change. I
Get
like
some air
change.
stuff helping you out.
One of the things that we don't do usually in astrological remediation is repression. So repression of chi, because astrology is a lot based on chi. So we work with the idea that sunlight hits our eyes, it goes down our spine, it comes out our chakras, it goes through what these things called the dermatomes, which are, the ancients would call it your soul senses machine, the aistaterion, which is how you're built sensorily, has a lot to do with your life purpose, right? So, why was I talking about this?
We're not getting rid of
that consideration.
We
we're not
don't
suppressing.
repress. Okay, we don't repress things because, like, for example, like we wouldn't say to you, "Calm down, KristaLyn, about your fixation on things." You're like, if you can taste that food tomorrow, don't do that. We don't repress it because we know that your soul senses machine is built to make thought pictures and function that way. So we would try to find a way where you could use those thought pictures for the good of all concerned, or something that really benefits your telos or something like that. So we don't necessarily try to say, like we wouldn't say to Emily, quit being psychic. That's if you're having a struggle over that, quit doing that, which she's not. But, we wouldn't repress the intuition because, as she mentioned, that was detrimental to her life. We would find ways for her to channel her intuition in different places. So even with anger, we don't really repress that because Mars energy repressed gets feverish and people get fevers, they get sick. So we would rather have the abusive offender, go jogging 20 miles and purge their Mars energy and then come back and be a nice partner than to say calm down. We don't really do that. We usually do like purgation of chi, basically.
Yeah.
First of all, perfect approach because repression doesn't help anybody with anything ever, and it does not work. It's like telling a teenager to be celibate. It's like
That's what you end up in therapy for later.
Yeah. What I will say though, when you said, I didn't know that about the soul machine, essentially having like your sensibilities, like what you're built for physically also as a part of the telos. And I think, especially speaking to the note of repression right now, people get really like, you have sensory issues. Like people will get frustrated with that or try to kind of ignore that or be like, okay, we'll just get better. And really, if thinking about that as part of your telos is a really empowering way to switch it.
Absolutely. Well, like in bipolarism, for example, I'm always like, never waste a mania because that's your telos working. Like, so we astrologers are the queen and kings of bipolarism. Like, all the psychologists will say is like, do you sometimes feel sad and sometimes feel happy? And like, we're like, you will be sad for 16 hours. And then for 14 hours, you'll be in a hypermania where you will be interested in writing in your journal or but we actually see it as that's the sunlight causing, or the vibrations of the planets causing manias, which are the expression of telos, right? So how do we, when you go into one of those psychic modes, that's your soul senses machine working to do its telos, right?
So circling back to kind of the telos space, what are recommendations, if you have any, for people who want to live more in their telos or get connected to their own personal telos?
Okay, well, there's two thoughts I have about that. One is, and that's a really good question, one is your daimon, which is your spirit guide. So they would say constantly that the vision self, because we each are built our own way, we have to have a vision self to teach us what we're here to do. So a lot of it is like asking your oversoul or your highest self, what am I here to do? What is my next thing? And so Christians are really good at this. What am I being called to do? I'm being called to go on a mission. I'm being called to work with children. People could get better at being like, I am called to do X, Y, Z. Because it comes through visions. It could come in dreams. It could, everyone's spirit guide communicates that calling to them in a different way. Some people are automatic writing in a journal. Some people just know, right? But what it is like that getting into your intuition and listening, right? Now, do we have one telos? We have a cyclically expressed, ever-evolving telos. So the transits come in through the chart, and the ancients would say, there's a formula. Let yourself have a new heartfelt longing per the transit. Then grab at what you long for and bear beautiful fruits. So, for example, if I have Mars in Cancer and it likes to crochet, and Jupiter comes up to it, I'll be like, where's my crochet hook? I just long to crochet, and then I'll like pick up my crochet hook, and I was like, no, I'm making an animal. And then when the transit passes, I'm like, get this thing away from me. I don't want to crochet anymore, whatever. But the point is like there's something called the grasping urge, which is whatever we grab at, whether it be our psychic crystal ball or, you know, maybe KristaLyn, it's a computer to write your book. Like, you basically, that is showing you what your Telos is trying to express. So if people don't know what to do, I say take yourself on a grasping journey. Take yourself to the store, walk through the store, and see what you are inclined to grab at. That's kind of that's how you know what your next kind of calling is.
I like that as a new form of like window shopping divination. It's really nice.
Well, I appreciate the permission to not have to stick with one thing all the time because of the cycles. That's something I work with clients on a lot, where I'm like, you can ebb and flow, and if you like this today and you want to work on this thing today, fantastic, but if you want to work on that thing tomorrow, fantastic too. And I think especially in a lot of the like belief work I'll do with people who are pulling and releasing beliefs or blocks or curses or whatever it is that they're under, a lot of times it's like you must be one thing when you grow up and you have to funnel the energy into that, which is, in my opinion, anti-human, is also something that we're all kind of stuck in the society machine. And so breaking out of that and giving yourself that's so much freedom to just play. And that is finding your Telos. Like, I love that. Yeah, I know I just keep saying I love it, but I just think the philosophy is fantastic.
Teleology is truly mind-blowing. I mean, if kids and people knew about teleology from, I mean, it's development theory, really, and it's looking at, you know, people developing cyclically, and, you know, it's like, are you psychic all the time? I mean, you are and you aren't. Like, you probably have moments where you start channeling, and then sometimes you're like, I don't know, reading a romance novel or what. But it's like people that have this linear approach, like you were saying, where they think I should start exercising, so I need to exercise 1 hour a day. And it's like, well, actually the moon will hit your Mars, and then it'll kind of wait 2.5 days, hit your Mars again. It's like, really, if we looked at the reality of how humans do get inspired, it's like, I'm gonna go running tomorrow, and then 2.5 days later I'll feel like running again, and then, you know, it's like, and so releasing from the linearity of action, I think, is like a huge, like, change.
The permission to flow.
Yeah.
I love the idea of exercising with the sky too. That just made me feel real sparkly, because I'm a very flowy person that way, where I will do just whatever feels best. I've always been naturally that way. I'm very connected to doing very similar to what you're saying, where I'll just be like, well, today I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to do that thing. I'm going to do this thing over here. Sometimes to my own detriment. I'm not saying that's the perfect way to be, but sometimes it definitely gets it. But the idea, I don't know why I've never applied that to like exercise focus too, but that makes a lot of sense.
Well, how do you, as a psychic, or how do you guys help people identify their purpose?
Oftentimes I spend a lot of time talking to the higher self and talking to the spirit guides, genuinely. And I don't think there's just one, right? So like, I think that's something that I always focus on, because again, that's that linear thinking, right? Where, well, there's one thing I'm here to do. I'm like, maybe, but chances are it's not this one singular thing. It's like a culmination of all of these different plot points that you're navigating that you needed to come to navigate. Like part of it, the being is the navigation of that. So personally, with clients, I'll do a lot of like, well, what are your spirit guides showing me? And what is your higher self saying? And what can I see in your energy space? And based on those things, it's never the whole picture, because part of it is learning what it is, but it's a good amount.
I tend to blend that with astrology on certain levels. Like, I'll study the natal chart if someone's coming to me for an astrology thing. And usually, if they're open and they're excited about learning that kind of stuff and they're honest about it, their guides will start talking to me while I'm staring at the chart. So before I even meet them, I'm just like, okay, here's what's in the chart, but also here's some things that I think you might want to know. And then we'll just talk about like, where are you at right now? What if you like are ignoring obligation and other people's expectations? What's lighting you up? What makes you feel happy? We'll talk about it, and like I'll observe what they're lit up talking about and what they're not lit up talking about, and we'll kind of guide them into kind of recognizing how to feel lit up, or how to recognize when they are lit up, so that they can do that more in the future. But yeah, I'll also bring in timing techniques and just be like, this kind of stuff is, you know, right up your alley right now. It's available to you. So if you wanted to try this out, now's a good time. That kind of stuff.
God, I love that, like what lights them up, because that is so astro, right? Because it's like when you're, you know, sun's your right eye, the moon's your left eye, and it's like what you look at and what you feel. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But astrologers do funny things. Like, I was talking to my new bandmate Nina, and I was like, I was like, yeah, I'll be having these barbecues for 2.5 years. And she's like laughing at me. And she's like, why would you plan it that way? I was like, well, Saturn's going through my 11th house for 2.5 years. I'll be building community. But it's like when you get really technical about your Telos, it's actually kind of comical. You know, it's like, I'm very technical about it. It's like I almost do like strategic planning, you know, because I know I've watched my chart for 25 years, so I know what the parts of it do. And it's like I've built my brand around those parts kind of functioning. And so, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just the know thyself element of it, right?
Yep.
Of course, you're going to strategically plan for yourself based off of the cycles you know you're going to experience. That's awesome and smart.
Yep.
Yeah. When people
So you said you're in a band. What type of music do you play? I'm just like totally weighing over there because I was like, oh, fun, sparkles.
Oh yeah, well, I've played piano since I was 4. I've been in many bands for about 30 years. At this new band, I don't know. We're really gonna have to figure out what the Telos of our band is. All I know is that we're two kind of empowered ladies. We were thinking about a name, Dollhouse 6, because I have this clown persona named Stardoll, and she does all these kind of clowning around. Especially when I make big moves in astrology, I get in all kinds of trouble. Then I'm like, no, I'm a clown. Oh. It's a tactic, but yeah, I think what we'll do. I don't know. Well, we're still forming, so we'll have to see. What did you play music?
I played like classical music a long time ago, and then I sang. I just love music, and you said you're in Portland, and the music scene up there is fantastic. So I was like, oh, what do you do?
Wait, where do you live?
I live in Lake Tahoe. Yeah, my brother-in-law lived in Portland for a long time, so my husband would go up there all the time to see his brother.
So, KristaLyn, have you read Installment?
Yeah, we did it as the book club.
Yeah. So what do you think about the fact that they compare people to plants in that book?
I think it's relevant. I know, like, you know, when you're learning in astrology, especially from Demetra George, which is where a lot of my training comes from, they relate the moon that way, too. Like the moon cycle, the lunar cycle. The moon, of course, also rules the body in astrology. So kind of seeing life forms that sort of just do their own thing. My favorite thing about comparing it to a plant is the permission it gives you to just grow and like lean into the light and get as much nourishment from it as you can. So their comparison to plants almost makes me wonder if they had less of a rigid society that they had to meet the needs of, or if they were at least in a position in their society where they could have these thoughts a little bit more without the pressures of, you know, obligation and that kind of thing. In practice, I think it's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, is it for a lot of times handling existential problems in the chart? Like sometimes we'll get a chart and we're just like, why God, why? Like, why would you get this chart? Like there's something weird about it, or it has a behavior that's hard to understand or something. Let's say it compulsively steals or something like that. And it's like, I always like to go into the plant space and be like, well, if we had a plant that was stealing, we would perhaps build a trellis and protect the other plants from it, or like, you know, it's like you get like they would do this in part to depersonalize the struggles that exist in a chart, you know, and say if we had something growing here that was like an invasive species plant, right? Like would you judge it and be like, this plant is terrible? You'd be like, well, this is an invasive species. Well, I will not plant it in this space. And, you know, it's like, if we could treat people a little bit more like plants, we would be less hard on them and be more inclined to tame them, you know?
Yeah. We'd be less biased in a lot of situations, too.
Well, I mean, you can take that so far, too. We were just in Iceland, 2 weeks ago, and their lupin is an incredibly invasive species, but they planted it on purpose because that's what will keep the soil, like, healing and healthy. So I think that expanding that even beyond that and being like, yeah, you're an invasive species over here, but we need you here to invade this part of it, versus over here where don't go into the happy little flower bed, but if you want to go over there and cause some havoc and fix some stuff, we like that too.
That's a great point.
Yeah, like let's take a chart that's hyper talkative. Okay, like I have a very talkative chart sometimes, which you're seeing on this episode, but it's like we could look at it if it was interrupting people. I don't really interrupt, but the thing is we could say like this chart is too talkative, or we could say, we need a lecturer for our class, that we need someone to talk for 2 straight hours. Oh, that chart's like can talk for that long, right? So I like that idea of not only just putting up with people, but finding ways for them to shine.
Yeah, I love that so much.
I mean, I think that's where this is just a psychic prediction, but I've seen this for a long time. So I have 3 kids, so I've looked and channeled at this quite considerably, but I would love our education system to head in that direction so much. And I do think ultimately it'll get there. I don't think it'll be like tomorrow. I think it'll be probably like 10, 15 years. But I think that education system of focusing on where will you be best utilized in your own growth and space so that you can grow not just solely in that area, you can still grow in other areas too, but we can really amplify the way you learn, the way you are, what direction you should head in based on who you are, what things you're passionate on learning, so we can really capitalize on your skill and make your life the best it can be, because you're a unique being as well as their life as a unique being, instead of making everyone learn the same this and the same this and the same this and comparing them against each other for how well they do in it.
I actually have seen that in some high schools in more affluent areas. We'll have like, this is the high school for more maths and science, and then this is the high school for that. And that's really cool. And I think that, you know, the more availability to that, the better. And the less gatekeeping for that kind of stuff would be the better too.
I think it'll be individualized though. Yeah. Like I think it'll literally be like, not like figuring out like
everybody
exactly
gets an IEP.
What the child's expression is. Exactly. Everyone gets an IEP. You know, and through the chart cycles or whatever it is that we use to discern that, if like your individual expressions work really, really good over here, you're like, you need to be mediating between these two classmates that are always fighting, and like also you should learn about that. Like it's just like a personal, individualized plan. I don't know exactly how it's gonna work. I'm not a teacher either, but I've looked at it quite significantly psychically, because it's something I'm very passionate about, being a mom of 3 neurodivergent kiddos, so it means a lot to me.
There's a Greek word called melatao, which means to train your body for that which it was made. And they say if you do this, you will be busy and zealous. So let's say we have a chart that's super water, right? It's just water people like water information, like music and art and, you know, things that aren't necessarily like publicly funded all that much. But what melatao would say is if you train for your body's build, that esoterion, you will be zealous. So if we put that water person in a file job where they're filing papers with there's no emotional information, they'll be like showing up late and they're like not really thriving there. But if we give them a piano, like now they're thriving, right? So I think that is a big kind of thing to what you're saying, is we all should be training for our Telos.
Yeah, we should be treated individually. I like that.
Well, I want to respect your time. We could talk forever and ever and ever with our similarly talkative charts, I think is where that is. But how can people find you? How can people find your books or that group that meets on Tuesdays? Could you share your stuff?
So, like I said, we meet every Tuesday from 5:30 to 6:30. So to find me, we go to my website, AndreaGehrz.com. That's Andrea, GEHRZ.com. Also, I'm very, very busy on Facebook. That's where my office is. So I'm not on Instagram much. I'm always on Facebook. So just friend me at Andrea Gehrz, and I talk to people there all day long because we do a lot of live group co-creation of stuff. And so yeah, AndreaGehrz.com or Andrea Gehrz on Facebook. I'm also on YouTube under Andrea Gehrz.
And for anybody who's watching this on YouTube or where it's visible, Andrea's name is spelled out right under her picture here. So, and we'll also have it in the description of the video.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for coming and sharing all of your wisdom. We really, really appreciated it. It was fascinating.
Thank you. If you email me your addresses, which I know is very personal, but I will send you a present because I am so thankful.
Oh, thank you.
I like little beaded stuff. That's my Telos.
I saw those at Norwalk.
Okay, you're the best. No, I'll absolutely send you that way.
Yeah.
Or if you if you send me your chart info, I'll make it to your chart.
I'll send you that too. Yeah. I know people are very protective over their charts, but I'm not a modest human in a lot of ways, so I'm like, sure, chart, have it.
I would trust Andrea. It's fine.
I would bless it, not hex it. That's for sure.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much, and thank you to all of our listeners. We really appreciate you being here and being a part of this journey with us. If you could, again, download the episodes, leave a comment. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave us a review. Any of those things really helps get the podcast out there. And definitely check Andrea out. And then make sure, everybody, that you... Oh, ready? 1, 2, 3. Go make some magic.